Hello, everyone, and welcome into the fourth edition of LFP Live, the first ever edition where all three of us are here.
A miracle.
Coming off it is a miracle. I think we could have picked a better time coming off of the heels of that game last night, but here we are nonetheless. Brian and Elliott, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Waiting for the lack of sleep from last night to start hitting me after we lost an hour. But let's be honest, I was going to lose an hour anyways from that game. So
exactly.
It hasn't hit you yet. I feel like I got hit by a bus this morning. I don't know what it is. This happens to be every time there's a time change back every year.
I'll feel it like mid-afternoon when I'm trying to be productive.
I've already been hit by a bus. It's only up from here, so
it's only uphill from here. Exactly. I saw a lot of people last night actually on Twitter who were like, "Oh, it's daylight savings tonight. Good thing the Jets are down 5-0, so I can just go to bed an hour earlier." Anyways, if the game was close, they would have had to stay up, but no, they didn't. Look at Matt already in chat. He's always here right at 9 a.m. Thank you to everyone who's here. Daylight savings off of a 5-0 loss. We still got people here right at 9 a.m. We appreciate it. Let's get into that game last night. We don't have to talk too much about it because, it wasn't great. Brian, where did it go wrong? The Jets obviously with a 5-0 loss. Rick Bowness after the game, I should provide some context here, did say it was the worst game the Jets have played in his 2 years here, and not one player had a good game. And you got to agree with him. I mean, I don't even think there was one player that I'd look at and be like, you know what, at least that player had some jump and was doing things. But I really don't think so. What did you see?
Well, it all started when the puck dropped. And no, and as much as I'm joking about that, it just seemed like the second the puck hit the ice, Vancouver was just in another realm compared to where the Jets were. And I don't know exactly what it was, where maybe it was the revenge game, boost for them, a really rough flight from Seattle to Vancouver, which can't be a long flight. Or it's just the fact that a back-to-back in the midst of their really long stretch here is just one of those things where, I mean, you said it last night in our group chat that Connor, there's really no reason to pull any stats from other back-to-backs because they were 6-0 on the second half of a back-to-back going into this. But no, and I honestly, I can't say I disagree with what Bowness said. I don't have a single player who stood out to me last night. The only two who did not have a bad game were Laurent Brossoit and Cole Perfetti, who weren't in the lineup. So it's one of those games where, to be honest with you, it was so bad that it was almost good that it was that bad, because literally you could just be like, I have nothing to talk about with this game. It's just shrug it off, put it behind you, don't do that again, or Bowness will come to your door while you sleep.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% accurate. Like you said, you were joking about it. It all started at the drop of the puck. But the first 2 or 3 shifts for Vancouver, they were cycling it. They were getting a million shots on goal. You would think the reason, they were 6-0 on back-to-backs. It was Hockey Night in Canada, 2 top teams in the West. Connor Hellebuck was playing this game because Brossoit played last night. There were reasons that, Jets fans had hope, I'll say. And going into it, we were like, all right, this is going to be a great game. I even tweeted out, and now people are quote tweeting me and commenting the next day saying this should be a great game. Enjoy the game, everyone. And now I'm just getting rinsed, but whatever. I'll take that bet.
There were reasons.
9 times. Yeah. It was Hockey Night in Canada. I was fired up, but anyways, Elliott, what did you see?
Well, if you look at, even you guys talked about the drop of the puck. If you look at, I believe that it was literally just before Vancouver's rush where they scored the first goal. Jets created havoc in front. Mason Appleton had a wide open net. We're not going to talk about his shooting touch ever because he shot it right at Thatcher Demko. He couldn't pick any of the other half of the net. So he gets robbed.
Generating. but he was generating, but then he wasn't able to finish on his great days.
He did that twice. The first Canucks goal and the third Canucks goal both came off of Mason Appleton being robbed, Vancouver going right back the other way and scoring. Like it's the definition of like, you know, Jets hockey of the past and the years that they haven't been great, where they generate on one end, they come right back down the other way. I mean, you can equate that to just hockey in general, right? Like it happens all the time. Doesn't matter who you are, where it's always like the team who doesn't generate much on the first couple shifts, or like as much on the first couple shifts, or gets the goal, doesn't get the golden opportunity. You know, it costs them. So I think it would maybe look a little bit different if maybe somehow Mason Appleton has a 2-goal night. Not sure if I've ever said that sentence, but
like he had that grade A chance, like literally 2.5 minutes in, where there was a wide open net. I'm like, oh, they're about to go up 1-0, and Appleton put it right into Demko.
Yeah,
if you just elevate the puck a little bit,
and
the Jets
shoot it
are up
over
1-0, and this game has an entirely different dynamic.
Yep. The Jets jump up like.
Yeah, I will say though, and the reason I know that this is probably the Jets' worst game that I've seen this season, even Josh Morrissey didn't look good.
Yeah.
And if Josh Morrissey doesn't look good, it's not going to be a good night.
Yeah, exactly. And the like when I thought this game was over, and like maybe there was a little bit of hope going into that second period, but late in the first, that chance, I'm not sure who set him up, but Appleton had a chance at the side of the net. He like one-timed it, and Demko was like sliding over. All he had over was really his pad. He made the save with his pad. The Canucks went down, I believe it was like 3-on-1 the other way, and Hellebuck got beat 5-hole. I think that was the backbreaker. I was watching the game with my friends. I was like, that's ball game. That's it. Because Hellebuck didn't look like himself either. That's 2 starts in a row now. The first Seattle game at home last week. This one as well. Like that second goal, I haven't seen Hellebuck let in a goal. Like the Burakovsky goal that won Seattle the game on Tuesday, excuse me, and the I believe it was Hoglander, the second Vancouver goal of the game, where it's a 3-on-2 rush. The Jets actually pick it up pretty well, and then it just kind of like Hellebuck just kind of like turns. It hits him in the chest. He just kind of turns and it just goes in. Like I don't know. I'm not concerned at all about Connor Hellebuck's play, but it's worth noting that he's had 2 rough starts in a row. He was sick, going into that game, so.
I will say too, like it's hard to necessarily do any pinning. Like obviously, like it would have been nice to get a save on a couple of those like weirder ones, but it was also in that first period, it was like a literal firing squad. Give up 20 shots. To I think they're 9. So it was an absolute disaster. Like it was the worst possible start you could have asked for, and you can probably get away with it with teams that have some, gaping holes that don't have the ability to really make up that offense. Like that's the thing. Last week in Carolina, they've struggled offensively. They've struggled keeping their foot on the pedal, and their goaltending has never been great. One of those things where Vancouver has none of those traits. So it's immediately you go down, and it feels a lot more daunting than that one. So I'm hoping that we can look back on this one after, the next few games, especially the one on Monday against Washington, and just say, okay, that was just a weird one. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think I already am willing to do that. Obviously the response is huge, but this is a good transition. I'm willing to do that because of what we saw Friday night against Seattle, which was a bounce back game. The Jets lost Tuesday night at home, a game where they controlled play, they controlled the shots, expected goals, all those things. But again, Connor Hellebuck lets in a late goal. They don't come away with the win. And then Friday, the first 2 periods were just some of the most boring hockey I think I've ever seen, especially off the heels of trade deadline day. I was ready to go to bed on Friday night. And then the third period, they woke up. And the Jets being a third period team is something I want to get into in a second here. But we've got over 50 people here live. 9-12, really 8-12 if we want to play that game because of daylight savings. So thank you to everyone who's
joining us on Twitter today.
Okay. Yes. StreamYard, that number is across all apps. So 55 people are
Yes.
joining us, not just from YouTube, but everywhere. Thank you to everyone who's with us. Drop a comment if you're here. Drop a like. We really appreciate it. Let's get into Friday and that Seattle game, a 3-0 win. And then after the Seattle game, we'll get into earlier that day. We'll get into the trades. But Elliott, what did you see on Friday night? The Jets picking up a 3-0 win against Seattle.
It felt like a snooze fest for the first 2 periods. It was quite boring, like you said. It was just like, I don't know. I don't know what it was. The Jets did their thing. They played low event hockey. They didn't give Seattle much opportunity to generate anything. And I think they made some adjustments from the home game matchup where the Jets finally realized that, hey, we're playing a speedy, fast team. Maybe we shouldn't just open up the middle for them and just let them come streaming right in. So they did a better job of getting guys to kind of force them to the outside, at least try to slow them down as well. So they obviously did well with that. And then they finally figured out how to beat Joey Decord in the third period. I think that's really where this game comes from in terms of like, it was the perfect Rick Bonus game. You play low event hockey where neither team really does anything. And then a team makes a mistake and you pounce on it. And then it ends up being the win. So
yeah, totally agree. Brian, what did you see Friday night? I mean, again, the first 2 periods, we don't have to talk about that, but the third maybe.
Well, that felt though like it fully intentional. That snooze fest felt like, that was the game plan, and you want to, just essentially choke Seattle out. And they did that through the first 2 periods. There was nothing to show for offensively. And obviously the Jets didn't have anything up until, that third period, but you're seeing what happens against a team that doesn't know how to handle that level of sort of structure. And the Jets didn't even get a chance to get into that structure on the Saturday, but it was a great example of the night and day of when it works, when it doesn't. And I think that Seattle game should be used as like a informational tool as to what it looks like when you're doing things right. And no, it was nice to see. And then that, little offensive burst in the third there to really get it going. But yeah, it was one of those games where I also just really want to point to the fact that Laurent Brossoit comes in after his terrific showing in Buffalo, gets a shutout. Obviously, Seattle only had, I think, 17, 18 shots, but one of those shots goes in. It's a much different game. So yeah, no, I have to give some props to Brossoit, who is. I remember when we were talking about how rough he had started the season, and if it was going to be an issue, and then there was that start. I believe it was it Carolina, early in the season. He
got
looked
45
incredible.
shots. Yeah.
And then from that point forward, he has been like a 920 to 930 goaltender. And it is just the fact that you're getting that out of your backup. And I can only assume we're getting him from a couple games this week. It wouldn't shock me if we got him on Monday. And then you've got, an Anaheim, game at the end of the week. So could be a situation where you see him a couple times this week. Might not be a bad idea. Give Hellebuck a chance to sort of regroup here because, as you said, that's 2 starts where he didn't exactly look like himself. And Matt, I think it's a key point of talking for the next week or so is to see how they respond with their goaltending duties.
Yeah, and Monday, like you said, 6:30 against Washington. Wednesday's a Nashville game. Playoff team in division. You'd think you'd want Connor Hellebuck for that one. And then Friday night, Anaheim, probably go back to Hellebuck. I don't know. Like they have options, and really, like, if Hellebuck's sick, he's still battling something. Clearly he didn't have his best showing last night. Brossoit's clearly playing just fine. He's playing at a high level. So roll with the guy that's playing better right now. Might as well. How about we get into, or I want to give my thoughts on the Seattle game before we get into the trade deadline stuff. I remember seeing a week or so ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, someone posted kind of a rolling expected goals for thing across like games. So it's like it's divided first period, second period, third period. And the Jets like were good in the first 2 periods. And then in the third, they just like dominate teams. And that is such like a pleasant change from recent years. I feel like the Jets in years past, there's always the thing, oh, they go into the third with a 4-1 lead and blow it and lose 5-4 in OT. This year, they are dominating teams in the third period. You saw it in the Carolina game.
It's wild.
It's wild. You saw it in the Carolina game. They're down 3-0. Don't worry, we'll put up 5 unanswered in the final 20 and come back and win. The Seattle game, it's an absolute snooze fest. No one's generating anything. Don't worry, we'll put up 3 goals in the third and win 3-0. And the Seattle game in general, really nothing in terms of offense from Seattle. That was really, really impressive. And I said it earlier, but that Seattle game kind of I'm willing to kind of write off the Vancouver game because just 24 hours prior, we saw the Winnipeg Jets play Winnipeg Jets hockey, and that's shutting the other team down. They flipped the switch in the third period, and Mark Scheifele and Josh Morrissey played unbelievable again. And then Saturday night, he played one of his worst games of the year. So that's just hockey sometimes. It's just weird. Yeah, Matt saying Kraken was such a patient game. I agree. Like nothing was happening. And then they waited for their moment. And then in the third period, they turned it on. Sammy Smokes Barbecue. How you doing? Thanks for joining us on this Sunday morning. We really appreciate it. We've got over 80 people here in chat. Love to see it. Rebel is in chat as well. Let's see. Using my Michigan football analogy, the Jets are employing the boa constrictor strategy: slowly squeeze the opponent for 2 periods, then go in for the kill in the third. I mean, hey, if that's the this is the thing.
The national championship Wolverines.
Yes, exactly. I don't mind that. But hey, if the Jets can carry this third period dominance into playoff games, it's going to be huge because there's going to be a lot of times where they're down 2-1, 3-2 going into the third, on the road, things of that nature. So it's a good sign in a playoff contender to have that ability to kind of turn it on in the third period.
But wouldn't you agree that that's why that they have to throw it on in the third? Is normally either the game is tied and they need to make something happen, or they're down. Yes, they've dominated periods where they've
comebacks though. I don't know. Like the Carolina game, there was a crazy comeback, but I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of games where it's 1-1, and then the Jets blow them out in the third, and it's like, okay. I think I think that's the thing is I still think that this team is a little bit of a ticking time bomb when they're up by multiple goals, because they like to sit back. They like to just kind of they want to let their foot off the pedal. And so I feel much more comfortable in tied games and games where the Jets are down, where they're chasing, because it seems to be that's when they play at their best. I actually feel, I think, the most nervous when it's 3-2 or 4-2. Well, more so 4-2, because they feel like they can let it off a little bit more. When they're up only by 1, I think the same thing applies. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I think that's just like Jets fan PTSD. Because this year, when they had that 34-game stretch of allowing 3 goals or less, I don't know what the official number was. I don't think they blew a single lead in that whole stretch. I honestly don't.
I'm trying to think. I feel like it was 1, maybe 1, but I don't know.
Maybe like 1 or 2. But I remember watching games with people, and they'd be up in the third, and it'd be like, oh, here we go, they're gonna blow it, and it's like, I think this year's team is just different in that sense.
I agree. I just think that the way that they're dominating third periods has to do with either the game is tied and they need to go play for something, or they're down and they need to come back, right? I don't think it. I think them playing well doesn't has to do with them being a good team, but I actually don't think. I think they still have that when they're up a couple that they like to reel it back in a little bit. I think this team is better when it's tied or they're chasing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and they play.
Also,
go ahead. Yeah.
I saw a thing. So Mike McIntyre from Free Press last night tweeted out last 5 Jets road games through 40 minutes. The Jets were trailing 3-1 in Dallas, 3-0 in Carolina, 2-1 in Buffalo. It was 0-0 in Seattle, and they were down 4-0 in Vancouver. So on the road, they seemingly can't really put up any offense in the first 2 periods. And whether they're, biding their time or not, it pays to get ahead early. And especially on the road, if you can take the road crowd out of it immediately,
Mhm.
you score a couple in the first period, you're probably going to do fairly well. But if you're going into a close game in the third, that road crowd's going to be right on top of you. The other
Yeah.
team's going to see that they have their shot, and I think it's an issue that I feel like it will become a non-issue once Toffoli gets into the system and you got more offensive options. But like as of right now, I think it's a problem where you have to score earlier because you can't just leave all of your offense to the third.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that's going to change because let's face it, Tyler Toffoli is going to replace a Vlad Nemeskov or an Alex Iafallo in the top 6, and there's your offensive boost. Like Vlad Nemeskov has been fantastic this year, filling up like in big spots on the top 6, excuse me. But Tyler Toffoli's got 26 goals. That's tied for the team lead. That's definitely an offensive boost. And we talked about it, Brian and I did on our episode. That's the perfect fit. And that's why, right? It's really, I don't know how to explain it. They're such a forechecking cycle dominant, like that's how they get their offense. They're not like a okay, hold on. We gotta appreciate this comment from Sammy Smokes.
Yeah.
Jets are a brisket team, low and slow for the first 2 periods, and boom, an explosion of flavor in the last few minutes of the third. I mean, that's great analogy.
That's
right there.
perfect.
Yeah.
Great analogy.
Making me
that's great.
hungry.
Yeah. But 9 a.m.
Oh my god, I
9:30 a.m.
love that.
9
some
a.m.
brisket and
brisket
eggs right now.
would
Oh,
hit.
geez. That would
Absolutely hit.
A 9 a.m. brisket.
Oh yeah.
This is when it's going on the grill.
Yeah, for dinner. Exactly. All right. Yeah, we've got over 90 people in chat. Thank you to everyone who's here with us. We really appreciate it. Last thing I want to say about this Seattle game before we take a break, and then we'll come back with trade deadline stuff. We're going to talk about Toffoli, Miller. Brian and I already gave our thoughts, but we're gonna give
Elliott's
them.
turn.
It's Elliott's turn, and we're gonna rehash our thoughts. Anyways, that the offense. There's such a team that is, predicate on them winning off the cycle and winning off the forecheck and wearing teams down. And I think them winning third periods is a product of that. And you just got to see it earlier. Like you see the signs, you see the forecheck. They're not a team that's going to score that much off the rush. Toffoli's going to help with that. But I think that right now, like the Lowry line is so predicate on them getting the puck, getting pucks deep and hitting and like winning the puck back and getting it to Morrissey and letting him kind of cook. And that's how they're going to score. Like the Scheifele goal in Seattle, the game winner. That's a cycle goal. Morrissey pinches up along the wall. They get it to Scheifele, and then he makes a nice play. And it's like, well, that's off the cycle. That's wearing a team down. That's capitalizing off of a mistake. And that's why I think the Jets have been so great in third periods, because they wear teams down. And so funny. People last night acting like the Jets can't play a physical style of hockey because they lost to the Canucks 5-0. Like, give me a break. Go back and watch the Canucks game from 3 weeks ago if you don't think the Jets can like win a physical game, because that game was physical, to say the least. Let's take a break from DraftKings, and when we come back, we're gonna get Elliott's thoughts on the Toffoli and Miller acquisitions, and Brian and I are also going to give our thoughts because I'm sure people want to hear them. We've got 100 people, it says, here in chat with us live Sunday.
Our
Thank you to everyone who's here.
Triple digit live streams. So whether you are in on the Twitter streams on either the LFP account, my account, or Connor's account, or you're with us on YouTube, feel free to drop something into the chat, especially later on near the end of the show. We always, take about 10, 15 minutes, which usually goes longer because we have no self-control. We usually take everyone's questions. So whether you're in the Twitter chat or if you want to hop on over to YouTube, we'll be happy to, keep an eye on the chat for you. But that's 100 people. That's a lot of people.
Off of a 5-0 loss with daylight savings. That's crazy.
People are waking up with LFP.
Dedication. Yeah, we love it. Let's hear it from DraftKings. And when we come back, we'll talk about the Jets' picture perfect Friday.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
Welcome back into the 4th edition of LFP Live. If you're joining us on YouTube, we are very, very close to 200 subscribers. So hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell, so when we go live, you get a notification, you don't miss it. But we're so close to 200, we'd really appreciate it. While you're down there, drop a like. And for everyone in chat, we are going to be talking about the Tyler Toffoli, Colin Miller acquisitions. Drop a trade grade in the comments. That's what Brian and I did on Friday, or on Thursday, excuse me. It was Friday. I was right the first time. Anyways, drop a trade grade. What did you think? How do you think? Do one for each trade. The Toffoli deal, obviously, for a 2025 second rounder and a 2024 third, and the Colin Miller deal for a 2026 fourth rounder. As Matt said here, Chevy adding at the deadline without giving up any prospects. Did anyone see that happening? I sure didn't. So drop a grade below what you think of those trades. But Elliott, let's start with you. Let's start with that Toffoli deal. That was the big one. What were your thoughts when you saw that notification hit your phone?
Well, first off, I was sitting at work, trying to keep up with the busyness of everything happening, and I turn and I flick on my phone, and it was perfect timing. Actually, I just logged on to Twitter, and I see news break that Toffoli to the Jets, and I go, "Excuse me, what is happening?" So obviously, you look at the deal in terms of draft picks and who's coming back and everything. Tyler Toffoli is exactly what this team needs. Like the Jets, I don't want to be that person, but the Jets actually identified their need and actually went out and got one of the needs that they had. They needed another right winger because as soon as Gabriel Velarde goes down, your right wing depth absolutely disappears, especially if Cole Perfetti's either not in the lineup or on the fourth line. Yeah. So having Tyler Toffoli as insurance is just chef's kiss. It's absolutely perfect. He scores goals. He will, like Connor said on the show, he's going to score a bunch of huge goals for the Jets. He is going to be absolutely perfect. And to give up next year's 2, that's correct, right? Yeah, next year's 2 and this year's 3 for Tyler Toffoli. I think that first off, I think we finally need to say to Kevin Cheveldayoff that we're sorry. And I think also
I was wrong. I
wasn't familiar with your I was familiar with your game, but at the same time, well, I was unfamiliar with your patience.
I really wasn't familiar with his game because then he had a press conference where he was like, yeah, there was one year where I offered 2 firsts for a defenseman and they didn't get moved at the deadline. I was like, what?
I'm hoping he's not lying about that because that would give also more respect to him. He's too candid of a guy for him to throw that out there.
Anyways,
either way, I think that it's a product of Matt is also putting this point out there as well. The 50% retention is also huge because it meant the Jets could go add later, which as much as they traded for Colin Miller, I really have a feeling that the deal was going to be Toffoli and Miller, but then the Jets decided on 50% retention instead of Miller. and we're going for somebody else. And then the clock started to tick closer to 0, and they went back to New Jersey and said, hey, can we revisit Miller? Either way, I think the Jets did a great job here getting a really quality player who's going to fit into their lineup seamlessly. He obviously, as all the other media outlets have smashed for the last 3 days already, that he has line chemistry with Sean Monahan.
Because they
Because
played a decade ago. Like,
yeah,
right.
well, they played a decade ago, and then they played a couple times,
Right.
obviously in count. But I'm not even going to go there. We're looking at the player, not at the line combinations. You still have to build line chemistry. I'm sure that it'll come. We've seen Ehlers and Monahan build chemistry, and yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Keeping the Montreal second is also huge. And you look at this year's draft, after pick 20, everybody's essentially the same. And so the Jets having an early second does not hurt them in any case, which means that they hope that their first is a late first. So I don't know. I think Jake Gensel being traded the night before. I think Jake Gensel being traded the night before for a pretty low price meant that the price for Toffoli came down quite significantly, right? Because there is a tier of difference there in player. I would say a healthy Jake Gensel is better than Tyler Toffoli, but Tyler Toffoli is still a really good player. And so
absolutely,
it's a win-win for the Jets, because Kevin Cheveldayoff just continues to prove that patience is a virtue, and they hit on 2 players. Like Sean Monahan is a hit, and they gave up their first, and he's looked great. And I think even if Toffoli doesn't have as good of a season as we expect him to, or the back half plus playoffs, it's still a good acquisition for what they gave up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, man, the 50% retention, like Matt said, is just so huge. Like that, I remember seeing the trade and thinking, wow, that's great value. And then I think like 15, 20 minutes later, Pierre LeBrun was like, oh, Toffoli's also coming over 50% retained. And I was like, are we giving up another pick? Like what's going on here? But deadline season is so funny because it's not his fault, but David Pagnotta was on Winnipeg Sports Talk, said Toffoli he said the asking price was a 1 and an A prospect. So for the Jets, what would that be? Next year's 1 and Brad Lambert for Tyler Toffoli? Like, I don't know. Like, it's so funny because every single deadline year, Matt Dumba's going for a 1 and then goes for a 5, right? And then Tyler Toffoli's going for a 1 and an A prospect, and he goes for a 2 next year and a 3 at 50% retained. Like, it's just the rentals are like, oh, we want the moon, and then they get nothing. It's ridiculous. And this was a perfect edition. Brian, I know we already gave our thoughts, but give them again. The Tyler Toffoli edition. Why do you like it?
I'll see if I can paraphrase myself, so I'm not saying the exact same thing I did on the show that came out yesterday morning. But I want to start by saying I've had, for whatever reason, I've had people questioning as to whether or not this is quote unquote all in because they didn't push all of their chips to the middle based on assets. I'm like, it doesn't have, assets going the other way only depend on what the market is. The value in what you're getting back, to me, dictates all in. Because let's be entirely honest here, at one point or another, both of Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli were both the number 1 remaining trade target on the board. Because Monahan was the number 1 target when he went, because he was number 2 just after, because Lindholm was traded a couple days before. So Chevy moved and he was the number 1 player at that point. Tyler Toffoli was number 1 on the TSN trade board that they had, live on the screen there, because there was never a guarantee that some of these other guys were moving, that everyone was like, oh my God, Pavel Buchnevich is the number 1 guy. I'm like, no, apparently he was never close to moving. And it was just like people projecting, which I don't know if it was a value play or whatever, but still, I really, really think that Kevin Cheveldayoff knew precisely what needed to happen to be all in, and he went and did it. He needed something defensively that could, move up the lineup if need be, but also a right-hand shot that, makes Logan Stanley not the immediate alternate to just come in. Now you even if you just alternate that bottom pair, you're doing Nate Schmidt and Colin Miller, which is an upgrade. So that's huge. But no, like the Tyler Toffoli deal for me is an absolute masterclass in one, getting the most out of your return, because like as we said, like it's really not that much. But it's also the fact that they clearly saw we need something else in that top six, and people have been talking about it for months, and it was addressed. That fear was addressed, that they didn't have enough scoring in their middle six, and you got the best guy left on the board. And I can't say enough good things about that deal.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I was shocked. Our Telegram chat, I was kind of freaking out. I'll admit it. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. Brian was the only one who had hope. But Eberle signed an extension in Seattle. Pavel Buchnevich, they said that, very quickly. Pavel Buchnevich, it came out from St. Louis that he wasn't being moved. And I was going, oh boy, if they don't get Toffoli, kind of screwed. Like there's no one else really on the board. And then they did, like half an hour later. I said it, and this is going to be my take with the Tyler Toffoli deal. I've decided, but he's going to score a few massive goals for the Jets in the playoffs. He's going to score like 3 or 4 goals of the variety of late in the third period, maybe an overtime winner, a series winner, a 2-1 game going into the third, and then he ties it up with 10 minutes left. Like, he's a clutch goal scorer. He's been there before. He's done it in the playoffs before. Jets fans will remember well the COVID year when the Jets got swept by the Canadiens. That series was 3-0 in Montreal in overtime. Guess who ended it? Tyler Toffoli for the Montreal Canadiens. He won a Stanley Cup in his rookie year with the LA Kings. And look, he's the kind of player that'll thrive in a playoff setting. There's not much space. We know that. And he doesn't need much space to score. He's an elite shooter. He's good at finding space. And the Colin Miller, the Colin Miller edition, I think, is perfect. You needed to solidify the bottom pairing. As Brian said, you needed someone who was going to make it so that Logan Stanley wasn't the first guy in the event of an injury. And at the absolute minimum, he's going to steady that third pairing. Like, best case scenario, maybe he's a top 4 guy and he plays with Brendan Dillon and he really meshes well. He's done it before in the playoffs. He was on the original Misfits that beat the Jets in the playoffs, going to the finals. I think Chevy just looked at past playoffs and saw the players that broke their hearts.
Like,
and
I remember that guy.
I remember that guy. But hey, I love it. And again, a 2026 4th round pick. I couldn't say like who cares louder. Like that pick is whatever. It's not real. Like you're getting free, you're getting free depth. Like this is the kind of thing. Like, Vegas treats like 1st round picks as not real. Like a 2026 4th round pick is actually not real. Like I'm convinced it's just like, sure,
it will be the draft when the draft year comes up, but until then, it's magic beans.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's. I mean, do we have any more thoughts on the Toffoli?
I wanted to just quickly mention one thing about Colin Miller as well, that if you didn't catch this last episode before this that came out yesterday morning, I talked about why I think Colin Miller is going to be actually better than what people say for the Jets, where when he was at his best, he had 41 points with Vegas in their first season where they went to the Cup final and they beat the Jets in the Western Conference final. Mm-hmm. And the reason he had 41 points was because the structure in Vegas at that point was pick your moments for the defense to jump into the rush.
Yeah.
How do the Jets play? They pick their moments for the defensive players to jump into the rush. I truly think that with the way that the Jets play, Miller has a chance to, I wouldn't say he'd become like a 40-point guy again, but he's going to be able to produce and be an effective player on both sides of the puck, because that wasn't how things were really done in Jersey. But no, I'm curious. I know we talked mainly about the Toffoli deal, and I know that's mainly what Elliott was going off of on that. But in terms of just general sort of thoughts on Miller's game, I want to know where Elliott's at on that, because that I feel like his game is less exciting, but I feel like it's just important, like as important as Toffoli.
Yep. I think there'll be a little bit less hectic play. Like Dylan Sandberg doesn't play with very much, like he's not a very like high event player, right? You could say a Nate Schmidt or a Neil Pionk is a high event player, right? So it's interesting to see that they went for a Miller, but you look at you look at multiple players that they have in their defensive core, a Dylan DeMello, a Dylan Sandberg, and now Colin Miller. You've got 3 guys there that are all players that do not like to play high event hockey, right?
Yeah.
So I think Miller is a perfect addition. And like you said, Brian, with the Vegas Golden Knights playing with a little bit more of a jump up into the rush style of play, I think that'll benefit Miller. We know he's got a hard shot. That was the one thing that lots of people were.
Rocket.
He is one of the hardest shots in the league. So not that means a lot, but like it's something. And I'm not trying to grab at straws here, but like I think he will be a better option than Nate Schmidt, a cheaper option, might I add, and will also be a million times better option. And I don't care if he's been playing better this year when he's been in spot starts, he will be much better than Logan Stanley. So I think whether
proven,
Miller,
right?
Yeah, Miller is fully proven. I think that it's a much better option. I think having a potential Sandberg Miller third pair or Dylan Miller with Sandberg Pionk also intrigues me. I still do think that the Jets were in on somebody else big and Miller was the fallback option, but I still think that this fallback option is better than the option of not doing anything at all. So I think that's where we have to go back. I'm just scrolling up in the chat here. I think CMAC makes a really good point here where Chevy wants to keep picks from trades. I think that's why the Montreal second wasn't in talks with anything. I think that's a really good point of having the MTL second not be used because that's from the PLD trade. Chevy just wants to use other people's assets for draft picks, develop the players, and then go, look what you could have had. Is he is he a petty guy? Is that what this is about?
I think too, and like jokes aside, because if they hit on that Montreal second, it's going to be such a twist of the knife in that deal. But I do legitimately think that the mindset for the Jets front office with using just draft picks and being very tentative with actually using prospects is, even if these prospects are somewhat unknown, you're likely extending your competitive window by not moving them and them only being a couple of years away. Because like let's be honest, based on what you have now and based on what could be moving out and then just moving up internally, they're probably still just as competitive next year, even if they don't, move anyone into trade. So you are going to be able to extend that window by, not moving a Brad Lambert, not moving a Rucker McGroarty, not moving any of these guys that, even if they're like a little bit of a question mark, like a Chaz Lucius, if he manages to figure it out even a little, suddenly you've got someone else who could play in your middle six down the road here. So it's such a valuable thing to not move picks and or not move prospects. And obviously it might take that to get a bigger player at times. This was not one of those years. And they got a terrific guy who, if they re-sign, could be an even better deal. But let's be honest, like not moving these, especially the forwards, the prospects, like you've suddenly just created an extra year of, possible competitive hockey.
Which I think this team needs to continue doing, right? Like, I think that's the whole MO. We're not going to talk about ticket sales, but just without me mentioning it, I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to stay competitive.
You have a good team. You have
for
a good
as
team,
long. Yep, they're trying to stay competitive as long as they possibly can. If that means not trading draft picks, not going after the number one target, and getting other players to fill out their roster, I think that's what they're trying to do.
But it's smart. They've got Connor Hellebuck in his prime for another 5 years. They're going to be a contender in the West for all 5 years, easily. I have no issue saying that because, like Brian said, they're going to have an infusion of youth in a sense coming up here, and they're still going to have Nino Niederreiter at $4 million and Mark Scheifele as their top line center. They're still going to have Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey at $6 million. Like that, this team's going to be good for the next 5 years. Easily.
Well, and sorry, last thing I just want to say too. Also, if then those players don't pan out, like a Chaz Lucius, I'm sure they still have some sort of trade value. So I think that's what Chevy's doing. He's waiting till like everything else, he is waiting till the absolute last moment to trade picks and prospects for players. So a Lucius, or let's say Lambert, doesn't fully fill out how we hope he does, and he's kind of like a bottom 6 center with some really good offensive upside, then I'm sure Chevy will then trade him for either more picks to go get somebody else, or we'll trade him in a deal for a player that'll help the roster to continue to compete.
Yeah. And one of those players that is likely to compete, I want to bring up this comment from Matt. One of those players that'll compete for a spot next year, might even win out a spot next year, Ville Heinola. He will no longer be waivers exempt, so I'd almost lock it in that he's on the Jets next year, whether it's as the 7th D or in the lineup every night. But I think his question with Miller joining, does this mean Ville stays on the Moose unless injuries occur? I think 100%. I don't see a pathway for Heinola to get into NHL games this year, and it sucks because
unless there's
he made
total
the team
catastrophe.
he made the team out of training camp. Yeah, unless there's an injury, which in the playoffs, if one of their more skilled defensemen gets hurt, I still think they might bring in a Ville over a Stanley in that case. But I really think Ville doesn't get into games this year, which sucks because, like I said, he made the team out of training camp. I just want to say we are at 170 people here live. Again, that number is combined through YouTube and Twitter, but that is by far our highest. Thank you to everyone who's joining us here. Again, they lost 5-0 last night. It's daylight savings.
We lost a lot of sleep.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of reasons for people not to show up today, but we've got a record number of live viewers. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Everyone in chat posing great questions. We're going to open up our question segment in a second here. But CMAC asked, if Josh Morrissey gets injured, which D would be used as the Jets' offensive defenseman? Can we survive without him in the playoffs? That last question, no. Can't survive without Josh Morrissey in the playoffs. Like,
no one
wrap it up.
Who
better
moves
luck
up
next year. Yeah,
will have
better
any
luck
level
year.
of impact that he does.
He's the best Jet outside of Hellebuyck. And I think the gap between, like, Hellebuyck and Morrissey are up here. I think the gap between the next best is pretty large. Like, I think it's Scheifele, but it's still like Morrissey is going to be up in top 5 for Norris voting, I think. I if he keeps on this pace that he's been on the last 8 to 10 games. Scheifele's not up for like the Hart or whatever. Like I know that's a bad comparison because there's less defensemen than there are forwards, but Josh Morrissey's an elite hockey player. I had a take the other week that he would be Canada's second best defenseman if a best on best started today. Obviously, Cale Makar, I'd still take him. It's between kind of like Morrissey and Noah Dobson and Devon Taves, like, and the way he's playing recently. Again, last night, kind of brutal from Josh Morrissey's end, but look at Friday. Like, I don't know, man. He's just on an unbelievable pace, and I think the Jets would be absolutely screwed without him, to put it nicely. Do we want to open it up to questions, or where are we at here?
I'm good. Matt asked me a question specifically that I wanted to answer.
You wanted to address the rumors?
Yeah, I don't know why you're asking that, but not very often. You can ask the guys. I'm not a huge coffee drinker. It's normally if my girlfriend
a 9 a.m. 7-Up instead.
Yep, I'm more of a I'm more of a caffeine, well, that's still caffeine, but more of like a sugar bubbly guy. I mean, I'll have a coffee if the girlfriend I buy her a coffee in the morning normally when I drive her to work, and if she doesn't finish it, I'll have it. But I'm not a huge coffee guy.
Fair enough. You had to address it.
I had to address it because if I don't, then it looks a little looks like I'm trying to avoid.
You're trying to duck. No, I will say, not being a coffee guy, again, a lot of reasons this morning. Daylight savings, up late, like 9 p.m. game last night. I don't know, man. I think today would be the prime day to have a coffee if there were one. But
I mean,
Hey.
I don't really
I mean,
have much stuff in terms of coffee here for
that's totally
me,
fair.
so it's like I
Totally
don't really
fair.
don't really have a choice. It's either water or we're pulling
Yeah.
out a
Coke.
Pepsi's, but
There you go. There you go, Matt. I didn't really drink coffee till my 30s. There you go, Elliot. You got lots of time before you start drinking coffee.
8-9 years.
If that's the timeline you're on, there you go.
8-9 years still.
Yeah. Choices TK brings up a great point here. Saw Freeman mentioned Toffoli was looking for 4 times 6. If everything is a match, what are the chances of re-signing him and Monahan? I think it was after the Friday game, right before I was exhausted and passed out in bed. I looked at the Jets cap sheet, and it says that they're roughly going to have 14 million next year in projected cap. Now they got to bring back a lot of players. They got to bring back Perfetti, Lauren Brossoit, who I think isn't coming back. They got to bring back Dylan, Brendan Dillon, that is. They got to bring back Dylan DeMello. Colin Miller is now a UFA. And then, of course, Toffoli and Monahan. I think they value Monahan higher just simply because he's a center. And you've got Rucker McGroarty probably making an NHL lineup next season with the Winnipeg Jets. And he's probably cheaper, I would think. I'm not 100% sure. There's a lot to happen here. Like if Tyler Toffoli scores a game 7 game winner and has like 7 goals in 10 playoff games, like this, his number's going to go through the roof. He was apparently highly coveted at the deadline, and then the Jets got him for pennies on the dollar, but that's neither here nor there. I think there's a chance if they move off of Nate Schmidt's contract, the last year of his, which is $6 million, that gives them $20 million. I would assume Perfetti goes bridge contract because he's not going to want to sign long-term after the back half of the season he's having, which keeps his contract number pretty low. And then Monahan and Toffoli, man, I think there's a chance if they can move off of Schmidt's contract, maybe move a little bit more money out. I think there's an opportunity. Maybe Mason Appleton, whose last year, I think he has 2.2 million on his contract or 2.1. I think there's a chance, and it might be me drinking the Kool-Aid here before Tyler Toffoli's even played a game, but I think that would be so awesome if they were able to retain both. And you've got one more year of Gabriel Velarde at cheap value, and Josh Morrissey's on an incredible contract. Like Chevy, man, it's just doing what he does.
Just absolutely wheeling and dealing.
I'll ask you guys, who do you think has a higher chance of coming back before we've even seen Toffoli play a game? Toffoli or Monahan? Brian, put me on the spot.
See, I'm torn on this because like I also think that Monahan is going to, because he was on a very, very cheap deal.
He was.
He's going to obviously want a justified pay increase.
Yes.
And the center market commands more always.
Yep.
But there are certain things in this league that cannot be overlooked, and that's goal scoring ability. Tyler Toffoli is on pace for his 2nd consecutive 30-goal season. He's already done it before in his career. He averages between 20 and 30. I think in terms of what the Jets might be looking to do in terms of being, solidified in this sort of competitive window, I think Monahan is more likely because he's not necessarily a flashy center, but he will probably command a decent amount. But I think the Jets really value depth down the middle. And that's why, last year, I think everyone was so disappointed how it ended out because when you have, Scheifele, Dubois, Lowry down the middle, it should be better than it is. So I think they're going to try and do something to not replicate it, but I think they're going to try and, really get that strength down the middle without, worrying about that down the line.
Yeah, I wonder if they do take that route because with the Stastny deals and now the Monahan deal, it's been like, hey, we need a second line center, right? Every year it's kind of been that the Jets are going to be in the market for that. I wonder if they keep that theme rolling and bring Toffoli back and then have kind of a hole at second line center going into the year. And that's the move they'll make. If they're in a really good spot at the deadline, they'll go and pick up a second line center. I don't know, but centers command more in the open market. That would mean paying more than what Jake Gensel got, than what Tyler Toffoli got. Right. So it's definitely interesting. Elliott, Monahan or Toffoli, who's more likely to come back next year?
Just based on what was said over the last like couple weeks here since the Monahan deal, it sounds like it would probably be Sean Monahan. Like, if I had to stamp it right now and give my seal of approval, it's Sean Monahan.
Calling it right now.
Just because they've been valuing him for a long time. They've been wanting to find a way to bring him in, and obviously this was the year. But yeah, like it just makes the most sense. He's a player that seemed to want to be here. Then you have it that he has chemistry with Nikolai Ehlers now. So then that's going to mean that the Jets are going to potentially want to bring him back because of that. And then, yeah, it looks at in terms of just the Jets liking his game and wanting to bring him in for a while, that it probably means that he's their number one to try to next of the guys to, or the first of the guys to bring back that were newly acquired. But yeah, Tyler Toffoli, I think maybe would want to resign, but he seems very set on, like, I know it was a lot of his answers were very generic, but it really did feel like he was set on, just helping the Jets here down the stretch run and helping them into the playoffs. I'm not like Monahan.
I think that's just the typical answer of like, hey, I'll worry about my contract.
Yeah, but Monahan kind of felt like he was kind of talking about a longer term view at things.
He was here for longer. He was here for almost half the year,
which I think is also why I think the Jets are trying to convey the message to him that, hey, we're bringing you in longer. We want you to get a really good look at the organization, really see if this is a fit for you. I will say, I think it's advantageous for the Jets to continue to add players who have played in Canadian markets, just because then they seem to be better with wanting to stay here. But either way, I think it's Monahan over Toffoli, and maybe they bring back Toffoli if the price is right. 4 times 6 is, I think, a little bit on the higher end for if the Jets want to bring. I think it's a good contract. I just think for the Jets to be able to bring everybody back, depending on what Perfetti is asking for, and if they can move off Nate Schmidt, I think then there's a balance of, okay, is 6 a good price in terms of bringing him back with Nate Schmidt off the roster? But I think with Nate Schmidt on the roster and it's a $6 million ask, I think it's almost an impossible task to bring everybody back.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll get into that. That'll be a good offseason discussion. But I want to open up the questions portion of the episode. Drop your questions below. We're going to answer as many as we can, kind of rapid fire style. But while you guys do that, we just soared past 200 people live in chat. Unbelievable. That is like more than doubled our record live. So thank you to everyone who's here, whether you're on way more. Wait, I think it's almost triple. Or wait, it might even be 4. Anyways, math is not
hard, especially in the
math is, especially for communication students. Math is very hard. So
that's why I'm a communication student.
Exactly. If you're here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We're almost at 200 subscribers. There's over 200 people here. Again, some people are on Twitter, some people are on YouTube. But if you're here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like, and drop your question below. Elliott, I know you had to bolt at 10. Do you have to? I
mean, I can probably answer one or two, sure. And then then I'll probably head out. And then
Elliott's gonna have to bolt. But let's get into some questions. Let's start here. Choice STK. What are the chances we do a total rebuild of the defense corps? Like I said earlier, I think Ville Heinola is going to be an NHL player next year. He won't be waivers exempt anymore, so he won't be able to go on the Moose without someone being able to take him for free. But Brian, what do you think? What are with DeMello up, with Dylan up, with Heinola probably being an NHL player? What do you think the chances are we see a very different defense corps outside of Josh Morrissey next year?
I feel like it's more of a retool than anything, and that sounds like a very hockey executive answer of me, but I feel like they bring back DeMello because of his sort of almost feels like a calming presence. I have a feeling that Brendan Dillon is on the outs this year. There's already been some buzz about him, wanting to possibly play at home in Vancouver. So we'll see where that goes. I think that there's there's a move to be made on the defensive group, and whether that's Neil Pionk or Nate Schmidt, I feel like something has to happen there. And I feel like management knows that because they've been kind of handcuffed by that for a while. But no, I feel like you're going to see a lot of familiar faces. I also think that, as you said, I think Heinola is, he is a Jet. He's not a Moose next year. He is a Jet.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be, more of a puck moving feel to it. And I think that's for the best, especially with some of how the forwards play. So I think you're going to see a retool, but you're going to see familiar faces.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just quickly, I mean, not really much else to add to what Brian said, other than I think there's one re-signing, 1 to 2, one guy walks, and then 1 to 2 guys are either traded or. And to answer C-Mac's question, I don't think Schmidt is bought out. I think they look to trade him so that they can get all of that cap space, so that they can have all the space as possible. Because if you buy him out, you have to pay him money, and that goes towards the salary cap, right? And yes, it may be the reduced rate, but if you're the Jets, when you're trying to compete, you need all that money that you can get. So I think it'll depend on what they think they can do with him. I'm hoping that maybe Neil Pionk as well in the offseason is the player that gets, if they move them both, but I would also be okay with just Schmidt and then them kind of making a couple, moves in and around everybody else. That first pair stays the same. I think it's second and third pair. Maybe even Sandberg gets a bump and they're looking for a brand new third pair. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't mention one name. Do the Jets look at possibly re-signing Colin Miller?
Yes. I think so. I mean, as a depth guy, I mean, again, we haven't seen him play a game in a Jets uniform. What if he doesn't fit?
He could be great. He could be awful. Who knows?
He could. Yeah. It's a fun discussion nonetheless. I think DeMello, Adam asked a great question here. Do we think he's 100% coming back? I don't know about that. I'd say he has a much higher probability of coming back than Brendan Dillon. Brendan Dillon I think he's going to be 33, and he's played fantastic these last 2 seasons. He has been unbelievable, exactly what Rick Bowness wants, a shutdown defensive defenseman on that second pair. He steadied it. Him and Neil Pionk have played together the whole time. And he's, I think, simply put, Dylan Sandberg is his replacement next season. I think Sandberg is up on that second pair, hitting the beginning of his prime. Dylan's going to have to go, and then Ville Heinola comes in on that third pair, maybe with a Colin Miller or maybe with a Nate Schmidt if they don't move him. But I think, unfortunately, and I put a lot of emphasis on that because Brendan Dillon's not only a great player, he's a great human. He had a great interview in that Seattle game with Dan Robertson in the intermission. I value those interviews a lot. I don't know why, but anyways, I think Brendan Dillon is gone, which is unfortunate. Question coming in from Twitter. What are your thoughts on the Jets acquiring a legit 2C this summer? Compare what Vancouver got out of JT Miller, first, third, what we've given up for rentals, Monahan, Stastny, Hayes, Eakin. The Jets have always been looking for a 2C, it feels like, and that kind of went into my answer on the Toffoli Monahan thing we debated earlier. They might re-sign Toffoli and then keep this thing going, where they just keep looking for a second line center. What do you guys think? I think Brad Lambert's the long-term hope for the Jets at 2C. They're molding him to be a center now. He's been with the Moose. I don't know if he's the 2C next year, maybe the year after. He makes the NHL leap and is a top 6 center. And even that's a bit of a stretch. But I could see them not acquiring, to answer the question, I could see them not acquiring a legit 2C and maybe getting a bridge guy in that role, like bringing back Sean Monahan, for example, and bringing Brad Lambert along to be the long-term 2C/1C when Scheifele ages out kind of thing. What do you see in that scenario, Brian?
I'll defer to Elliott to start just in case he has to run here. Because I've got a few thoughts, but I feel like I would ramble too long and he would, run.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly say, I think just before I head out, I think that the Jets won't, like with everybody else they have to re-sign. I don't think that they go for a legit 2C. I think that's where a Monahan re-signing comes back, and that they've got Lambert coming up on the pipeline, and I think they expect him to be a center.
Mhm.
So I think that they're going to try to not log jam that too much.
Yeah, fair
That's
enough.
really all I have to say about it. So
Fair enough. All right. Well, if you've got to run, see ya. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday morning, LFP Live number 4. Our first one with all 3 of us here. We went an hour and 5 minutes. It was great. And we got over 200 people here in chat. So yeah, see you. Elliott will be back. We'll have an episode out Tuesday, I believe, and then Thursday, recapping some games, maybe having a guest on. So stay tuned for that. But Elliott, have a good one. We will see you next time. Let's get into the next question here, Brian. Just rapid fire here. Will Barlow, McGrory, and Salamonson join the Moose next season? Barlow, I don't think so. But McGrory,
he has to go back to junior if anything, right?
Okay, then yeah.
Or is that
Barlow,
or did that change?
I think that changed with COVID, but I don't know. Anyways, McGrory, I think, is a Jet next year. So him joining the Moose, I don't think so. Salamonson, I think, is on the Moose next year and playing like what Ville Heinola did, like playing big
He might
minutes.
come over to North America this year, from what I've heard.
He might, yeah. Chevy said that in his presser. They asked him about McGrory and Salamonson. McGrory, he was like, yeah, we haven't really talked. I mean, I've talked with his representatives, but not about business. And then Salamonson, he was like, yeah, we're going to be looking to bring him over. And it was like, oh. So, yeah, that'll be really exciting. And the Moose will get another prospect. And he's been fantastic. We talked to Scott Wheeler, the Athletic. He's been great over in Europe. Salamonson has. His development is really coming along. So that'll be fun to watch. But what do you see with McGrory? I think Barlow's a no. I think we can both kind of agree on that. But McGrory and Salamonson, Moose next year, Jets. What are you thinking?
See, I do agree that I think McGrory's a Jet next season. I don't know if he starts a Jet. He might have like one of those little stints with, just getting accustomed to the speed of the pro game, because when we spoke at length about this with both Scott Wheeler and Murat Atesh from The Athletic, and both of their points were the college game is nowhere near where the pro game is. So there's going to be some growing pains. And obviously we know Rucker McGrory is a massively talented player. And I think that he is going to be a Jet mainstay, I think at the earliest, at some point next season. But I feel like if he doesn't, make the jump and play Moose games this year, which is we're not exactly sure of the timeline. But also the Moose aren't playing playoff hockey more than likely this year. So
I mean, hey, they're rolling right now. Actually, I think they've won
they
a
are
bunch of games in a row. They might sneak in like low seed and then play someone really good and get rolled.
Yeah,
yeah.
But no, it feels like McGrory is going to be one of those guys who might just take a few games at the AHL level just to get him up to speed, and then he'll make an impact. And then Salamonson, he has to get used to the smaller ice, but I feel like his game will translate fairly well.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get into the next one. Matt, again, Jets essentially have 13 forwards under contract for next season. Perfetti and Gus Arfaze. This isn't a question. Sorry. This was a response to our Monahan full UC stuff. Yeah. Think the Jets are done with Perfetti at center. Lambert over Perfetti. I don't know.
It feels like it.
I might defer to you.
The vibe feels like it.
One. Yeah. Well, okay. Context. Let's add some here. Cole Perfetti is going to be in the Jets roster for a long time. He's going to be a very good player. I think what we've seen this year, they gave him like one game at the start of the year at center and then moved him back to the wing. They must have really not liked what they saw, but he was great the first half of the season. And Cole Perfetti discourse nowadays is kind of dwindling because he's got 1 point in his last 20 games.
We also might not see him for the rest of the season with Toffoli coming in because that's his wing. Yeah.
I don't think the Jets go get Toffoli unless Perfetti struggles the way he has. Yeah. So anyways, it's really interesting. And Cole Perfetti, man, I think he's going to be great player. He's just in a brutal slump right now. I think they are done with him at center, and Lambert would be the guy. Lambert's very fast. And I think that helps as a center, being speedy, being able to get to pucks. be a good puck supporter in the middle. So I could see that. Adam asking, do you think Rutger McGroarty is a personality that could drive ticket sales with the hype around him right now? I say yes. Not only off the ice, we talked about his personality a lot. He's the future captain of the Winnipeg Jets. I think that's basically a given. He's been a captain his whole life, every level of hockey. But I think even on the ice, Rutger McGroarty's the kind of player that could drive like entertainment and ticket sales simply because he's like a modern day power forward that like hits and also scores. Like he scored a beautiful goal for Michigan the other night against their number 4 Michigan. They were playing the number 5 ranked Notre Dame, and he scored like this beautiful one-timer goal, roofed it glove side to give Michigan a 5-4 lead in the third period, which ended up being the game winner. Like I think not only off the ice, and he's the most easily marketable player that we've seen in the Jets for a long time, just because of that off ice personality, but on the ice too. I think he could have that effect because he just plays such a fun style of hockey. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it easily. I don't think a player like him hurts the ability to,
Yeah.
sell tickets, because like
Yeah.
obviously there's a smattering of different things that go into, the marketing of this team, but having someone as captivating as he can be, it helps. And,
For sure.
being able to, especially because you can rally around him for years, especially if they are planning on him being the
Mhm.
former, or I guess that he's a former captain of everywhere else, future
Yeah,
captain of the Jets. So it's just one of
absolutely.
those guys that you can really rally around.
Yeah. Matt, bring it up. Remember Parker Ford? Where did all the hype go? Preseason legend. I remember people thinking he was going to make the team out of camp, but yeah, that didn't happen. Sammy Smokes, favorite barbecue: brisket, ribs, or pulled pork? This is it. I mean, hey, it depends on the mood I'm in for which one I'm craving, but I'm gonna go with brisket. Brian,
I'm
I,
between
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm between
sorry.
brisket and pulled pork. I feel like
Okay.
brisket in itself, um, I've had great briskets and I've had mediocre briskets. A
Mhm.
great brisket beats out anything on any day for me.
Yeah.
But pulled pork to me is one of those ones that you can kind of just do whenever,
Mhm.
toss it on, a Hawaiian roll, a nice little sweetness with it there, maybe some coleslaw on top, and then you're in
Money.
business. Like
Yeah.
a slow cooked pulled pork for me is comfort, but I don't know, a good brisket to me, it clears everything always.
Yeah. I said brisket and then didn't feel the need to explain myself, but you encapsulated my thoughts perfectly on that. Um, I think that's it for the questions portion. I think we're getting out of here. We've got over 200 people live, nearing 230 now, live on Twitter, live through YouTube. If you're here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on the way out. If you're on Twitter, head over to YouTube, join us. We're almost at 200 subscribers. We might have hit it by now if enough people subscribe during this episode. But if you're on Twitter, head over to YouTube, subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And one last question here from Adam. If, say, DeMello doesn't resign, who do you see keeping up with Morrissey?
Dylan
That's an interesting
Sandberg.
one. On
I
the
feel like
top pairing?
I feel like they've seen him move around,
Colin Miller. Okay,
but I feel like
yeah.
they want to try to possibly move him up and get some time, and he has played on his offside, through the professional level occasionally.
True.
But I feel like they're very high on what Dylan Sandberg can do, and I am very high on what Dylan Sandberg can do, and he helps neutralize a lot of the negatives in Pionk's game, which is, I think, a great, asset. But
Mhm.
yeah, what do you think?
I'm going to throw out a hot take here on the way out for the over 230 people here in chat. Elias Solomonson.
Wow.
Not next year, or maybe next year if he really impresses with the Moose. But hey, Salomonson and Morrissey were paired together in training camp this year. So I'm not like, obviously they weren't going to have Salomonson play right out of training camp on the top pairing with Josh Morrissey. But I think that that's kind of a sign that that's where they're heading here. And, maybe Dylan DeMello doesn't come back for that reason, because they think, we have this guy who's ascending at a ridiculous pace right now. Let's kind of keep that momentum rolling and throw him right with Josh Morrissey. That would be nuts. But I think there's a real possibility that that's the long-term goal, and that's what
Yeah.
they want to do is have him on that top pair.
And I
And
hope so.
I hope so too. I mean, obviously, me sitting here saying they want their right D prospect to become a top pair defenseman. Like, no, like, yeah, obviously. But I think that that's a real possibility. And I think Dylan DeMello being 30, going to be 31, needing a new contract. Colin Miller also being 31, needing a new contract. And then Neil Pionk being only under contract for one more year. There's a lot to be had there on the right side of the defense core, and a lot that's going to change, I think, over the next year or two. And Salamonson could be the guy that just passes everyone on the depth chart and plays with Josh Morrissey. Thank you, everyone. This has been so much fun. We're nearing 250 people now.
I have one shout out to do before we get out of here.
Let's do it.
So last night, before whatever that game was, game aside, on Twitter, at YYJ Jets fan, also known as Disgusted Jets fan on Twitter, put out a call to Winnipeg Online Media and took us to the game on a sign, and we were included. A nice little shout out to us, Kenny and Rennie, Legal Curve, Winnipeg Sports Talk, Marat. We were at the game last night in spirit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it hurt so bad. But
yeah.
No, we want to give a shout out. The fact that, people
try
are
this here. Let's see.
Yeah, there we go. Including us in their game day rituals now. And when we started this, a couple years back, we were just hoping that we could sort of start a slow climb. But this last year especially has been, incredible for us. And, obviously you guys are listening, and you guys are the ones that, drive that success. So we have nothing but thanks to pass on. And to you in Vancouver, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking us to the game last night. I wish it would have been a better outcome. But no, I figure that's a great way to end out the show.
100% agree. That was so cool to see. It was kind of surreal. I remember quote tweeting it and saying, like, this is incredible. Enjoy the game. And at that point, like, I saw it late.
Enjoy the game.
At that point, it was already 2-0 Vancouver. And I was like, they better come back just for this guy. But yeah, wow. That was so awesome. Thank you for, including us to the star-studded people on that board
The
there.
mainstays.
That is incredible sign. Yeah, the mainstays in Jets media landscape. I didn't know how to put that, but anyways, let's see. I tried sharing my screen there. It actually didn't go too horribly. So let's get out of here. Over 250 people in chat. On the way out, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss when we go live or new episodes, and we will see you Tuesday. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back next Sunday for the 5th edition of LFP Live. Make sure you join us for that. And this is going to be a fun week. Tyler Toffoli, Colin Miller getting into the mix. Stay glued to all of our Twitters for all the news. At Level Flight WPG, at Connor Rabchak 1 is mine. At YWG Brian is Brian's. And at Elliott Russenholt 1, I believe, is his Twitter handle. I could be wrong. But anyways, go follow Elliott as well. See you guys next Sunday. Stay tuned for episode 75. It's going to be on Tuesday. That'll be a ton of fun. But yeah, any last words on the way out, Brian?
Tomorrow is going to be a step into the new Jets down the stretch. And I hope we can all sit back and enjoy it and, look forward to talking about it on Tuesday morning.
100% agree. It's going to be a fun game tomorrow night. I'm ready. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you Tuesday. Have a great couple days, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and enjoy the game tomorrow night. See ya.